Welcome to Entry Point Faith, where every week we discover fresh meaning in the world so you can find faith your way. And now, please welcome your host, Pastor Nancy Lafferty.
Several years ago, when I was a counselor for the Indianapolis public school system, I had a boss who began and ended every one of the monthly meetings for all of the counselors with these words. Now, don't forget to take your whole lunch hour away from your desk and stay in your lane. I always found that really interesting that we counselors, who should be the paramours of self-care and the guardians of boundaries, should have to be reminded of those very basic adages. But as the days passed, I quickly realized why she put those words into our heads every month. Every one of us struggles to take care of ourselves, and we all struggle to honor and respect boundaries. And it isn't because we are rude or callous or ill-intentioned. Quite the opposite, in fact. We often fail to honor and respect boundaries because we want to be helpful. We want to keep people from suffering as we have. We want to intervene and prevent pain. In 2018, the phrase, "stay in your lane," became highly prominent when the National Rifle Association criticized emergency room doctors for their comments on America's crisis of gun violence, telling them to stay in their lane in a tweet that implied that their remarks on gun control did not fall under the doctor's umbrella of expertise. Well, doctors responded to the criticism by sharing their own stories of traumatic gun-related injuries and deaths witnessed under their care, collecting them under the hashtag, "This is our lane." Highway signs posted at a construction zone might instruct motorists to stay in their lanes, as weaving within the narrow spaces creates a hazard. Athletes who race in marked-off lanes, such as swimmers, might be urged to remain in those lanes to avoid disqualification. According to Urban Dictionary, stay in your lane means mind your own business, keep moving straight ahead, and don't veer into my personal affairs. In the business world, stay in your lane carries a bit of a different meaning. Stay in your lane can be used to mean sticking with what you know and with what you're good at. In other words, we should focus on what we do best and leave the experimentation to other people. I would like to use this phrase, "stay in your lane," today to springboard into a very quick, simple conversation about boundaries. We have all heard the word boundaries, but we may not know how to define it. It's often thought that boundaries are something like a property line or a brick wall used to keep people out. But boundaries are not rigid lines drawn in the sand that are clear for all to see. Boundaries are a way to take care of ourselves. When we understand how to set and maintain healthy boundaries, we can avoid feelings of resentment, disappointment, and anger that build up when limits have been pushed. When we have established healthy boundaries, we know that making our expectations clear helps us in two specific ways. It establishes what behavior we will accept from other people, and it establishes what behavior other people can expect from us. If we have healthy boundaries, we might share personal information appropriately. Not too much or too little. We might understand our personal needs and wants and know how to communicate them. We might value our own opinions. And finally, we might accept when others tell us no. However, if we have loose or open boundaries, we might get too involved with other people's problems. We might find it difficult to say no to the requests of others. We might overshare personal information with other people. And finally, we might seek to please others for fear of rejection. The truth of the matter is, we all struggle with setting and maintaining boundaries. And we might actually have a mix of boundaries depending on the situation. For example, we might have very strict boundaries at work and looser boundaries at home or with family and friends. And certainly, boundaries are often based on our cultures, especially when it comes to the sharing of personal information. It also helps us to understand that there are several types of boundaries: physical, sexual, intellectual, emotional, and financial. Setting boundaries is important to our identity. Dr. Tara Quinn Cirillo states, in a nutshell, it's knowing how to separate your feelings or stuff from someone else's. As human beings, we have our own thoughts, memories, and lived experiences. And sometimes that can become very blurred with someone else's. Boundaries are healthy for helping you identify and keep that space. In our culture, there are security alarms that signal when physical boundaries are crossed. An intruder has entered the perimeter. In our newer cars, there is a warning signal that tells you when you're about to drive out of your lane. But we don't have that alarm that goes off when someone has breached our personal boundaries. But wouldn't it be cool if we did? What if we had a beeper in real life that went off when we or someone else was about to veer out of our lane and get into someone else's business or make stuff up or just get involved in something that we shouldn't be in? A lane corrective alarm for real life. Somebody needs to invent that. In the years of counseling that I have provided for many decades, I would conclude that the problem is not the inability to recognize when someone has crossed into your lane. The true difficulty lies in our ability to make our boundaries known and to know how to let someone know that they're infringing on an area of our lives that is no longer comfortable. Let's look at a few ways to set and maintain good boundaries so we and everyone else have a better chance of staying in our lanes. Setting healthy boundaries is good for us spiritually, physically, emotionally, and mentally. The key to setting boundaries is communication. We have to let people know by our words and our reactions what we will and will not accept and tolerate. If you have a friend who calls you too late at night, ask them to please refrain from calling you after a certain hour. And if that friend is me, I will honor your request. Like so many things, consistency is important. Marcy and I got into the bad habit of sharing a bit of our food with our dog, Bo. Well, over time, his insistence on becoming part of every one of our meals was no longer enjoyable. We couldn't get mad at him. This is what we allowed to happen. So A couple of days ago, we reestablished the boundary that he would no longer eat our food. We must be consistent and retrain him that our food is no longer his. I'll let you know how that progresses. As we are focusing on establishing our own boundaries, it is important to be aware of the boundaries of other people. Sometimes we can't tell what their boundaries include, and it never hurts to ask. When a friend doesn't want to see a movie or go to a certain restaurant, the boundary is clear. It is in the best interest of everyone to honor it. Children pester and badger others into trying to change their minds. Adults with common sense don't do that. We all know what happens when our boundaries have been repeatedly violated. As Dr. Quinn Cirillo states, repeatedly breaking boundaries can build animosity and contempt and cause people to withdraw. Even the Bible encourages us to honor the boundaries of our friends. And when you find a friend, don't outwear your welcome. Show up at all hours, and he'll soon get fed up. We've all been there, full of excitement with a new friend or the offer of help. But without clear boundaries, we find ourselves closing the door, avoiding our new acquaintance, and regretting the encounter altogether. My friends, boundaries are essential for many reasons, and they look different to everyone. We all have the right to set them, maintain them, and alter them as needed. Don't be concerned that setting boundaries may make us unfriendly or confrontational. It is very possible to maintain our boundaries without upsetting other people. We needn't feel guilty about setting boundaries. Without them, we grow far more upset and guilty. People can't read our minds. Sometimes we need to be reminded of that. Setting and maintaining boundaries is an important part of caring for ourselves and for our mental health. I wish I knew who penned these words that I'm going to close with, for they are filled with incredible wisdom. Whatever you are willing to put up with is exactly what you will get. Amen.
Thanks for joining us this week on Entry Point Faith. The Entry Point Faith community meets every other Sunday at Conner Prairie in Fishers, Indiana. For more information or to join in person, visit entrypointonline.org. Entry Point Faith is a part of the Switchpoint Media Network. Find a variety of podcasts by visiting switchpoint.media.